Such an honor and a blessing to be here at this tremendous Black History Month celebration. Certainly an honor always to be in the presence of your great Senator, Bob Menendez. We appreciate him. He's a voice for the voiceless, a defender of the disenfranchised. You can't ask for a better champion down in Washington, D.C. than your senior senator, who's respected on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the United States Capitol. And as he mentioned, he once held the position as chair of the House Democratic Caucus that I am now privileged to hold, and he did such a tremendous job, has such a lasting impact. I tell my staff whenever we're unclear about which way to go, I said, just do what Bob Menendez did, and we'll be okay. And so I'm thankful for your senator, thankful for my friend, your Congressman, Donald Norcross. You know, and I say that. I say my good friend in the real sense of the word, not the congressional sense of the word. As y'all know, you hear us all the time say, my good friend, the distinguished gentleman from the great state of California, or my good friend, the distinguished gentleman from the great state of Texas. And most of the time, you hear members of Congress use the words, my good friend. We don't mean it, y'all. But with Donald Norcross, he absolutely has been a good friend. I'm thankful for his support and his guidance and his advice, and he certainly does a tremendous job on your behalf here in the 1st Congressional District in the Garden State, the great state of New Jersey. Thankful to the Reverend Dr. McNeil for opening up your house of worship, and to the First Lady. Dr. McNeil had a word for us today. And I can tell he can exegete a scripture. I've always wanted to use that word. I can't spell it, Doc, but I know what it means. And so I'm thankful for you and all of the distinguished members of the clergy who are here, and all of my colleagues, Madam Mayor. Thank you. It's great to be in this historic town. And to the honorees, I certainly salute you. I know that based on the protocol and the schedule that has been laid out, that at the end of the program, there's going to be a reception and food. I believe dinner is going to be served. That's a dangerous place for a politician to be. And so I'm going to try to follow the admonition, the advice of a former Sunday school teacher of mine who once said to me, I grew up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church, she once said to me on the question of public speaking, young Jeffries? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, when it comes to public speaking, be brief, be bright, and be gone. And so let me not tarry before you for a significant period of time, but reflecting upon the theme, standing on the shoulders of giants. What a marvelous theme at such a time as this. You know, America is a great country. It's a country that was born with the highest of ideals, liberty and justice for all. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally. Land of the free, home of the brave, a country that was founded on high ideals. But we also know that at its genesis, at its origin, America also had a birth defect, a genetic imperfection, if you will, on the question of race that manifested itself in the form of chattel slavery, one of the worst crimes ever perpetrated in the history of the world. A country founded on high ideals, a great country, but at the same time born with a genetic imperfection on the question of race. But we're a resilient country, and we work hard to continue our march toward a more perfect union. What I've found is that we always strive and make progress, but that progress has often been accompanied by backlash. Progress followed by backlash. We made progress in the first instance dealing with that original sin, along with, of course, the Native American genocide, the original sin of slavery, through emancipation, with white folks and black folks and people of goodwill coming together, led by great voices, of course, like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, deal with that original sin through emancipation. And then the Reconstruction era, a golden era of progress in America. 13th Amendment outlawed slavery, made it unconstitutional. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. 15th Amendment, the right to vote regardless of race. The Reconstruction period between 1865 through 1878. But then all of a sudden, the North pulls out of the South, and the backlash ensues. Immediately, Jim Crow descends upon the land. The KKK rises up. Plessy versus Ferguson is decided, effectively saying that separate and unequal is constitutional. The black codes are imposed. The lynching epidemic takes shape. Progress followed by backlash that lasts for almost 100 years. And then a new generation of Americans rises up, folks like Thurgood Marshall and Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, Dr. King, John Lewis, as the senator mentioned. A new generation rises up to continue the progress in America. And Brown v. Board of Education has decided it reverses Plessy versus Ferguson and says separate and effectively unequal is unconstitutional. And then you have the civil rights movement, the March on Washington, of course, leading to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, dealing with Jim Crow, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, trying to breathe life into the 15th Amendment, the Great Society, the War on Poverty, Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, living wage, free school lunch, culminating in the 1968 Fair Housing Act, a great era of progress in America. But as has been the case, everything began to change in that fateful year of 1968. Dr. King is assassinated in April. And then in June, perhaps on his way to the White House, Senator Robert F. Kennedy is assassinated after winning the California primary. And then in November of that year, 1968, Richard Nixon is elected, running on a platform, so-called Southern strategy, of capitalizing on the anxiety that exists in many quarters in America at the progress that had just been made. A so-called law and order platform. Sound familiar, y'all? Richard Nixon gets elected, anti-busing, anti-affirmative action, anti-government, and then initiates the war on drugs. The era of mass incarceration begins under Nixon in his first term in 1971, when he declares drug abuse public enemy number one. At the time, there were less than 350,000 people incarcerated in America. Today, there are 2.2 million, disproportionately Black and Latino, significantly nonviolent drug offenders. Progress followed by backlash. And then in 2008, a new hope emerges with the election of the 44th president of the United States of America. 44, that's my new favorite number, y'all. Barack Obama gets elected. And as Senator Menendez says, makes a tremendous difference in America. Current president's trying to take credit for the Obama economy. When Barack Obama came into office, unemployment was at 10%. When he left, it was at 5%. When Barack Obama came into office, the stock market was at 6,000. When he left, it was over 18,000. When Barack Obama came into office, he reduced the deficit by more than $1 trillion. This president has increased the deficit by almost $1 trillion. Under George W. Bush, in 8 years, our economy lost 500,000 private sector jobs. Under 8 years of President Barack Obama, we gained 14 million private sector jobs, and more than 100 million Americans now have health care protections for pre-existing conditions, all because of Barack Obama and great work in the House and the Senate with folks like Senator Menendez. And so it was a moment of significant progress in America. But y'all remember when he was first elected and some folks said that this is going to be the dawn of a post-racial society. But when you look back at American history, many of us, myself included, should have realized that his election was just going to trigger a backlash. And the backlash started immediately in 2010 with the rise of the so-called Tea Party. They said, "We want our country back. Who took your country away?" And then 3 years after that, in 2013, the Supreme Court in Shelby County versus Holder struck a near-death blow to the Voting Rights Act, opening up the door for the era of voter suppression. And then 3 years after that, in 2016, the backlash moment was complete with the election of so-and-so. We have a hater in the White House, the birther-in-chief, a master of deception, a reality show host running around the Oval Office masquerading as the President of the United States of America. Wickedness in high places. 44 progress followed by 45 backlash. And so we convene today in a backlash moment. But be not discouraged, because we also know that we stand on the shoulders of giants. We've come a long way in America through it all. Through it all, under much tougher circumstances, we know that African Americans were ingenious inventors. An African American invented the cotton gin, accelerating the pace of industrialization. An African American invented the traffic light. An African American invented the elevator. An African American invented the air conditioner. An African American invented the cell phone technology that all of you are using today. We stand on the shoulders of giants through it all, under much more difficult circumstances. And we know as a community that life is filled with ups and downs, with highs and lows, with peaks and with valleys, with trials and tribulations. You know, I fly a lot now between New York City, Washington back to New York City, sometimes travel for other members of Congress throughout the country. And I've come to the conclusion, Pastor, that one of the reasons why so many folks don't like to fly is because they recognize that at some point along the way, when they're up in that plane, they're likely to encounter turbulence. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Up in the air, 30,000 feet high, plane starts rocking back and forth, no place to go. It's at that moment when everybody on the plane gets religion. Folks start praying, "Lord, just plant my feet on solid ground." What am I trying to say? You can't get from your point of departure to your point of destination without at some moment along the way encountering turbulence. And you know, one of the things that happens when you encounter turbulence is that there are going to be some folks around, not in this church, but some folks around who doubt your ability to make it through. Can I talk to y'all? A former vice president once called these kind of individuals nattering nabobs of negativism. They are persistent pessimists, notorious naysayers, cantankerous critics. In Brooklyn, we just call them haters. Folks who, whenever you're on the verge of a breakthrough, want to step in and block your blessing. But we got to learn from our ancestors. One of my favorites in American history, who has a connection, of course, to this town and the Underground Railroad, is Harriet Tubman. You know, Harriet Tubman freed herself from slavery, as you all know, but then decided that she was going to go back down south, cross the Mason-Dixon line an additional 19 times, freed more than 200 black slaves. Every time she crossed the Mason-Dixon line, she had a Bible in one hand and a gun in the other. That's the original black sheriff right there. But they asked Harriet Tubman at the end of her life, when she was in retirement, they said, Sister Harriet, how do you feel about your heroics, all that you accomplished? And she was dismissive of that observation. She said, I could have freed more if they only knew that they were slaves. I think I just said something. I could have freed more if they only knew that they were slaves. So we're in a moment of backlash, and there'll be some doubters around, but it's self-doubt and self-confidence. We have all the talent, all the ability, all the resiliency in the world, but we'll be held back by self-doubt and a lack of I could have freed more if they only knew that they were slaves. But I stand before you optimistic as I bring this to a close because of our history, because of the fact that we do, as Senator Menendez has instructed us, stand on the shoulders of giants. And I don't believe he brought me this far to leave. That's right. We stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, there was some young folks who were gathered at the home of one of the wealthiest individuals in the world, and they're gathered at this estate. And they're on one side of the estate, and in the estate you had a big lake. And the lake was filled with crocodiles, alligators, and one small turtle. The owner of the estate, as I mentioned, one of the wealthiest people in the world, shows up. He sees these young people on the other side and calls out to them, says, if any of you are willing to jump in the lake, rescue the turtle, and can make it to the other side, I'll give you anything that you want in this world. About 5 minutes passed by, and no one responded. And so the owner of the estate turns around and begins to walk away. And as he's walking away, all of a sudden he hears a big splash. Turns back around, sees one young person in the lake, frantically trying to make it to the other side. Somehow this young person dodges the crocodiles and the alligators, makes it to the middle, grabs the turtle, bobs and weaves, makes it to the other side, gets out, dries himself off, hands over the turtle to the owner of the estate, who says, congratulations, I'm not sure how you did it, but you made it to the other side. Now, as I promised, you can have anything that you want in this world. And the young person paused for a moment and said, well, I just want to know who pushed me in the lake. I'm about to get out of your way. See, there's some times in life when you find yourself in moments of unexpected adversity. I think that happened to all of us in November of 2016. It was a moment of unexpected adversity with the election of the current occupant of the White House. And when you find yourself in a moment of unexpected adversity, this community knows, our community knows, that all you've got is two options. You can either sink or you can swim. And I stand here confident today because every time as a community we found ourselves in a tough spot, we always make it to the other side. Some said slavery, we fought for emancipation. Some said Jim Crow, we fought for equal protection under the law. Some said lynching, we fought for liberty and justice for all. Some said poll taxes, we fought for the right to vote. Some said there'll never be a black president. We fought to elect Barack Obama and integrated America's most exclusive political club. Whenever we found ourselves in a rough spot, we've always made it to the other side. And so I just stopped by to say, hang in there. And as long as we stick together, we're going to be able to get through this backlash moment. Just check the record. We stuck together and stopped them from repealing the Affordable Care Act. We stuck together and Trump Care was defeated. We stuck together and Michael Flynn resigned in disgrace. We stuck together and forced Jeff Sessions to recuse himself. We stuck together and Trump's phony voter fraud commission has been disbanded. We stuck together and ran Steve Bannon out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We stuck together and forced Trump to reopen the government after a reckless 35-day government shutdown, and we didn't give him a dime to do it. We stuck together and forced them to back away from that phony citizenship question on the census. We stuck together and Democrats now control the United States House of Representatives. If we stick together, then Bob Menendez is going to be in the majority. We're going to take the Senate, take back the White House, and in November, the American people will say 2 words to Donald Trump: you're fired. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.